Hello and welcome to the section on PHP language basics. So let's look at the objective for this section. After completing the section, you will be able to embed PHP in HTML pages. So we're going to start embedding the PHP and writing up and building up our HTML pages. Then you'll run the PHP on the console. So PHP is not just used to run on the web page. You can even run on the console, which is nothing but the command line. So I'm going to show you how you're going to do that. Next, we'll understand how the white spaces behave in PHP. You should be able to understand what is the purpose of white spaces in PHP and how it displays in the output. Then you learn about PHP Escaping Characters. Then you'll understand what are the roles of PHP Reserve Words, and you will come across all the reserve words that we use in PHP. Then finally, there are exercises, interview question, resources, and practical test. So I highly recommend you go and take all those things. Okay, so let's jump into the section now. Welcome to the lecture on how to embed PHP in the HTML code. So if you go to the material folder, you will find PHP language basics. Open this folder and you'll go to example 1. That's what we're going to see in this lecture, how to embed PHP tags in HTML. So if you go to the example folder, open the deliverables file and also open the logical flow of the example. So we're going to do the same way what we have done previously. Deliverables are basically your files that we'll be creating, and logical flow are basically the logics or the concepts that you'll understand for each files. Okay, so before you write any of the code, make sure your AMPs are running and you are able to access the local host. So we're going to check quickly that you're able to access AMPs. Okay, and then you know where your AMPs is installed. So quickly open that. Okay, so your AMPs is installed and you have a www folder. If you're on Mac, you will have the same folder. So you should be able to access that folder. So I'm going to create a folder here and I'm going to say language. Okay, so all the exercises that we're going to do part of this section will be in the language folder. Okay, so I'll minimize this and you open your Sublime. Okay, so we're going to start building these programs now. So make sure you understand what you're building. So I have my browser, I have my Sublime, and I have the logical flow of the examples and the file names I'll be using to creating these files. So it's very clear what I'm doing now. So first let's understand how to embed HTML code and display the PHP. Okay, so for this we will create an HTML template first, and after that we will start embedding our PHP. So I'll show you how to create an HTML template for the first time. The next time onwards, we're going to reuse that in our next lectures. So let's create our HTML. Head tag. I'm going to put a comment here, sample 1. Okay, so I have my basic HTML here. Let me save this. So if you go to www folder, go to language folder, and I'm using the same file name, HTML tags in PHP 1. So I've pressed Ctrl S on this Sublime. If you go to file, you have Ctrl S to save this file. Okay. So once you press Ctrl S, you save this file name, right? The thing that you're going to start writing is the HTML first. So that's the exercise now. So we'll finish writing the HTML. Let's view this file. Then we're going to embed the PHP code here. So for this, we go to language folder and I'll paste the file name. Okay. So you're able to see the H1 tag. If you go view source, so we're going to see all our code here. Right, so let's start embedding our PHP. So embedding PHP is nothing fancy here. You just use the same notation that you have learned, and then you can say hello world. Okay, so we haven't done anything, it's nothing new. We learned this how to use the PHP opening and the closing tag, and how to use the echo method to print a text. So let's quickly verify this right there. So if you open up and check the source, you should be able to see hello world. Okay, so this is how you basically embed a PHP in HTML. Okay, so let's start creating new files. The second, we will use the same HTML, and we will try to use PHP in creating the HTML attributes. So we're gonna see that. So I'll show you more ways how you can embed PHP. So I'll say create new, save this file, copy paste, and then we're gonna start developing the sample too. And this comment is HTML comment, so don't get confused between HTML comment and PHP comments. So next, let's look at another way of creating the PHP and HTML. So previously we have just printed the text. Now we will print HTML code itself. Say sample 1. Let's use print this time. Okay, and we'll close the p tag. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm using the same PHP notation. I'm printing HTML tags from the print statement, and I'll see whether I'm able to see the paragraph or not. So for that, I have to, let's do the number 2 here, right? So you see the same text. Let's verify the tag. So you have the p tag here, right? Let's look another example in the same file. We'll use a short notation, and we will print a horizontal line, right? Let me refresh this. Right, you have the horizontal line, you have the HR here. So you can use a short notation and the double quotes to print the HTML tags or whatever tags, or just the normal text. And let's do another way. Let's write the same paragraph which is outside the HTML, right? You're writing outside the HTML, and now you're using the PHP tags to print the text. Okay, so there are 2 ways. I'm going to talk about it. Sample 2. Okay, let's view this first. Okay, there's sample 2, and you can see the same output, right? So there are 2 ways. One, you can use print, and in the text you can use the HTML tags, or you can just remove the XML tags and put it outside, and you can just focus on PHP just to print the text. Okay, whichever way you feel comfortable while writing the HTML, both ways are fine, but highly recommend you put everything in one shot so you know what is the starting and the ending tag. Here, if you have long PHP code, then you forget what is a top and the bottom HTML tags, but here you are very confident that when you look at the print statement, it's all coming up from your PHP code. Okay, so these are the 3 ways, basically different types how basically use the PHP to print your HTML. So let's go ahead and create the third one. We'll use another way. I'll show you one more way to do it. Let's create one more file. I'll copy everything as it is, right? And then we're going to move on to sample 3. And here we're going to do one thing. So let's print the paragraph. Right? And I'm going to have an attribute here called style ff00, right? I'm going to have a semicolon here. Okay, this is plain HTML. Let's view this first. So I'll change it to 3. So I have this text. Let's print this with PHP. Okay, so how you're gonna do that? So let's comment this out first. Copy this one. If you want, you can give a try before you see how I'm actually doing it, and then you can compare it. So you can pause this video if you want, and you can start converting this and print this via PHP. Okay, so let me continue to do that. So notice that there's a double quote here, and we want that double quote to appear in the output. Make it to 3, and we want double quotes in the output. Okay, so we'll use a short notation here, and I'm going to embed them with the single quotes. Okay, so this looks fine. I have the double quotes coming up, and also I have single quotes embedding the double quotes, and I'm using the short PHP notation to print this. Okay, so these are one of the classic example wherein you want to get some values from the server, and some values you just want to print it on the output. Okay, so this is one of the classic examples. So remember this example, you can just not even print the whole block of HTML code, but you can put this kind of snippets inside any of the values, and you can print everything from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into another example. Let's look at example 4. Let's look at printing HTML in a different way. The previous one basically is printing with HTML attributes, so that's what we did. We printed the attribute. The fourth one is basically we'll use another way to print it. Okay, so let's do that. I'm gonna copy paste this. Let's do a sample 4. So I'm showing you different ways, right? You learned how to print text, how to print a tag, how to just print tag and text and just the tag. Use a HTML tag inside you print the PHP, then print the attributes of an HTML via the PHP. Okay, so we're going to use one more method to print the HTML tags and then print the normal text. So I'm going to use this example, right, and I'll do a reverse way. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I'm gonna say this is sample 3. So sample 3 is printed, so let's say sample 4. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm printing the HTML tags with PHP and the normal text as it is. So let's verify this. Okay, use source and it should be fine. So this is another way wherein you can print the start and the end tags with PHP, and then whatever text that you have, if you have a long text, you just write it over. So PHP will take care of printing the right positions, right? It's not jumbling up the position, it's printing whatever you have set it to print in the same order. Okay, so let's look at the last example. So write JavaScript alert with PHP. This is a very good example to understand how PHP really works in the background. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm gonna say copy this, Control N, Control S, paste this. Now you have the fifth file. I'm gonna use this. So we'll write in JavaScript. So we'll go to head section. Okay, so we'll place a script tag here. Okay, here I want to print an alert, and I want to print the alert with the PHP. Okay, Okay, so if you look at the double quotes and single quotes, I'm starting with the double quotes, ending with double quotes, then I'm using single quotes inside the method. Okay, and I'm using a method called alert, which is a JavaScript alert, which is a JavaScript function which is used to call the alert boxes on the web page. So when you run this program, you should see an alert saying that I'm coming from PHP. That's basically will be coming up from this piece of the code. Okay, right. So if you see the power of PHP, you can write the client-side scripting from PHP itself, and the client-side scripting will be executed by the browser. So PHP doesn't really care is it JavaScript or maybe Ajax or jQuery. Any of this code you can write it easily with the PHP, and it also helps you to understand a concept that PHP is trying to put the output to the browser. It's not trying to execute anything. It's dumping all the data back to the browser, and once the browser get the data, the browser is trying to execute that data. And while it executing, you understand, oh, this is a JavaScript, so let me execute it as a JavaScript. Oh, this is basically an HTML, so let me print that output. So you see the difference between client side and server side. Even though it is server side, it doesn't really care what happens at the client side. And when it reaches to the client side, all the PHP tags has been removed, and you will see the script tags that is basically executed from the browser. If you say okay, you look at the code and you should able to see the script tag here. Okay, so you can even control anything that you want to print or take care at the client side from your PHP code as well, which means you can even execute a jQuery from your PHP code. You just have to print that jQuery, call that method in the JavaScript, and once it is return it back to the JavaScript, so before that output is shown to the user, the JavaScript or the jQuery will be executed. Okay, so that's where the 5 examples that we have discussed, right? And make sure you have this material downloaded. So all the programs that I've shown is already available in this 5 programs, so you can go and refer to them. Okay, so quickly run through it. So sample 1 was to just use echo and the PHP opening tag and the closing tag to print the data. We use sample 2 to print the HTML tags. Sample 2 also had only printing the HTML tags and printing only the text. The sample 3 we were printing the attribute with the PHP. Sample 4 we printed the HTML tags and all the text we just printed without an echo command. And sample 5 we printed the JavaScript with an alert coming up onto the web page, and all this basically happening from the PHP tag. So that were the 5 examples for this topic on how to embed PHP in HTML. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on how to run PHP on console. So we're going to learn how to run PHP on console. So we will not run it on a browser, but I'll leave it and I'll try also on the browser to show you what's the output on the browser and what's the output on the console. So when I say console, is basically your command prompt. So open your CMD. That's basically your command prompt. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go to this language folder. How you're going to do it? You go to CD, paste the path, click enter, and you will be going to the D drive. If you are in the C drive, right, and you paste this command, let's say you did this, you will still be on the C colon. You see, you're in the C colon, you type cd, you'll see in the drive, you have to change the drive. So you go to D drive, then you are on the D drive. So clear, say CLS. So if you're in the material folder, open up the example 2, open up the deliverable file and the logical flow of the example. So let's review this for a minute, then we'll jump into developing this. So there'll be 2 files created part of this lecture. One is to configure PHP in the environmental variables. This I'm going to show you the step how to do that. It's not a program, but it's basically a configuration that you need to do to make sure to run the PHP on the console. The second step is basically writing up the code. We'll display the PHP code in the command line console. We'll run the PHP code in the command line, and then we'll display some HTML code and the PHP code in the command line console. So part of that will create these 2 files. So first we'll look how to configure PHP in the environmental variables. So what I mean by configuring PHP in the environmental variables. So if you go to the command prompt and type PHP, you will see this. It's unable to recognize PHP. But where is your PHP? Your PHP is running on amps, right? So let's verify that folder. Go to amps folder. Then you have your PHP. You have two versions. You have PHP 7.1. Okay, so this is where your PHP is running, and then you have a exe called php.exe. So we'll use this exe to run our programs. So what we will do, we'll take this path and we'll add to our class path. Okay, so for that you go to your environmental variables. You can just search for it. You go to advanced tab, environmental variables, click on it. Then you go to your path here, system variables, and click on edit. You can click say new, paste the path, say OK, and OK, and OK. So you will still not be able to execute it, right? What you have to do is you have to reload this command prompt. So what you're going to do, close this, and I'm going to open it again. Okay, now you should be able to have your PHP. This only happens because we have added our path in the environmental variables. So you should be able to see this before you actually run this any of the programs. So make sure your PHP is running fine on the command prompt. Then go and write your program. Okay, so I'll move back to the folder where my code will be. So I go to amps ww language, copy this, paste. Okay, so I'm in this folder and my PHP works fine. So make sure you have this PHP up and running and you're able to run the PHP. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the exercises now. So your first step is done. You are able to configure the PHP in the environmental variables and you are able to run that command. Okay, let's display the PHP code in the command line console. So let's write this program. I'm saying Control N, Control S, and I'm going to save in the same language folder. Okay, so first thing we will do is we will print hello or welcome to PHP. Then we'll print some text with echo and print. So we're going to try echo. And then print as well. Okay. So one thing I want you to note is whenever there is only PHP code in the .php file, I will not be putting the closing tag. So that's the recommendation from the PHP themselves. They say don't use the closing tag. So it's fine that you have the opening tag and don't have to close it when your code is only PHP and there's no else code that is required part of this program. If you, let's say you have an HTML code, right? In this case, you need to close this, right? Because you have to have more HTML code in the bottom. But when say you have no HTML code and you have no other code that is going after this PHP, then you should not be using the closing tag. So I'll follow the standard from PHP from them, and most of my programs I will not close this PHP. So take a note of that and make it as a practice. Okay, so let's run our program. Say PHP and put the file name there, press enter. So you see you have the welcome to PHP, hello world, and also this is printed from the console. We're going to do this from the browser as well. Hello world, this is printed from the console. Okay, so this is how you can run a PHP from the console. This doesn't have an HTML, so in the next exercise we are going to do with the HTML. Okay, so let's quickly create that. So I'm using Control N and Control S to save the file. So what we're going to do, just to save time, we're going to copy over the code from this one. I'll leave the hello world as it is. So let's verify this, how to run this and how the HTML will look like on the console. Okay, this time I'll say 2, and you see it prints everything. It prints the hello world, not the PHP tag, because it's executing the PHP code. Okay, so it's pretty much to help you understand how to run a PHP on the console. And the question is why you want to run a code on the console. This is basically for the debugging purpose, right? You want to run this program before you give it to somebody on the browser to run it. You want to verify how the PHP behaves. The HTML part is to verify how the output looks like on the web page. But if you want to verify how the PHP works, the inline PHP code inside your HTML, you use the console. It's a very good practice that you run your program on console. If you have a database connectivity, you're reading a file, you're trying to do all those lookups and trying to fetch the data from something, and you won't have a complex logic that you want to see the output first before you see the output on the web page. Because once it's in the web page, once you're in the web page, all the JavaScript, HTML and CSS come in picture, and then it basically give you a lot of things to think through. But when you go to the console, it's plain and simple. It's mostly showing whatever is the output of that program, and then you don't have to worry about rendering and all those things. You can just put all the trays there and you can see all the trays in the console itself. I hope it's very clear how to print a PHP on the console using the PHP command. And if you're unable to run PHP, make sure you set the environmental variables. Okay, so you have these examples available on the example folder, on the after folder, and you can open it and you can do this exercise. All right, that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on how to work with white spaces in PHP. So if you're in the materials folder, open the example on white spaces. Open these 2 files. So we're going to do these 2 examples, and then part of that will create these 2 files. The first example is how to add white spaces in Echo and verify in the browsers. I'm going to show you what is white space and how it affects the white space in the browser. Then we'll add some multi-line white space into HTML tag and verify in the browser. So you'll understand what is the purpose of white space and how it actually impacts, and how you can add so much of white spaces in the program, and how it actually behaves in a PHP and also in the HTML. So let's quickly create those programs. So I'll open the Sublime. I'll create this file, Control N, Control S. Okay. So let's write this sample 1. So what is white space, right? That's the first question if you're hearing white space for the first time. White space is actually space, right? This is called as white space. I'll extend this. White space is typically space. See the dots? You see the dots there? Right? That's basically called as white spaces. So what happens if you have a lot of white spaces in your program that is printing? How does it affect the output, right? Do you gonna get the white spaces in the HTML? Are you gonna see the white spaces as you type in the PHP program? Is it the output? Is it gonna be this space, E space, A space and test? Or is it gonna be a string saying that this is a test? What's your guess? Can you make a quick guess? Okay, let's gonna do this. So let's open this program. Let's save this. Okay, and there is no space, and if you have guessed there will be a space, there will not be a space. Let's guess the output. what will be the output? Does the output have a space? Yes, output have a space. Why it is that a browser cannot display white spaces? Because HTML ignores white spaces. Even though PHP prints those white spaces, HTML actually ignores them, right? That's how white spaces works in browser and also in the PHP. You can add whatever white spaces you want in your echo or in your print statement. It doesn't really matter how many white spaces that you have. It's just gonna print without white spaces because HTML is gonna ignore them. Okay, that's one rule, always remember. So let's say you're writing this test and you forgot, oh, this is a 2 spaces. Is my outputs gonna have 2 spaces? So you need to know this concept, that even though you have white spaces, HTML will ignore it. Okay, so let's look at another example. Let's create one more file, and as I told you, I'm going to remove all those question marks in the last, just to get used to this kind of notation, right? So let's write another code. So I'm going to copy this. Now I'm going to close this and I'm going to say sample2. This time, and you see even these are white spaces, right? Everything is a white space in your program, and also the white space that is going on to the browser. Okay, that's a 2 kind of white spaces. So let's look at the tags. Okay, so the quick way to write HTML free flow. Okay, let's say you add double quote here, you close double quote here. So actually this is everything printed on the browser. So now you can just free flow write your HTML code here. You are free to type inside this. Okay, it doesn't really matter how many spaces that you have, how many indentation you are doing, how many new lines you are creating, because HTML is going to ignore them, right? And PHP doesn't really care what you're printing. If you see the double quotes here, that's basically used to print this output, right? But if you write like this and you're going to see to this page, right, it's just going to be a one-liner. The reason behind, as I told you again, is basically the HTML is getting those spaces as per PHP, but HTML actually ignores white space. That's why you're not able to see all those white spaces. So when we go to escape character lecture, I'm going to show you how to get these white spaces. So for that, hold that concept as of now, and we're going to look into another lecture wherein we're going to deep down into how to work with the white spaces, new lines, tabs, and all those things. Okay, you have to learn that concept as a whole. So I'm going to cover that topic in another lecture. Okay, for now, understand how white space behaves. So if you are going to write an HTML and a lot of white spaces, don't really worry about it. Okay, you're free to type whatever you want to type. Even though you have a new lines here, it doesn't really matter for HTML. Even though it's printed in the output, for it, new line is different. A break is different. HTML needs an HTML code to break it, not the white spaces. So white spaces are literally ignored by the PHP and also by the HTML. So have some fun with it, and you can create your own examples and try out how white spaces behaves. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on PHP Escaping Characters. So we have seen white spaces, and we have seen the white spaces are not printed on the HTML page. And now if you want to print the white spaces, so you have to understand the escaping character sequence. So if you open up this folder in the materials, you will find the deliverables file and the logical flow example. I'm going to talk about this file later. We're going to develop how to display and escaping characters in console. We're going to print those console escaping characters, then we'll print the escaping characters in the HTML page. As part of this, we will create 2 PHP programs, and those programs are available in the after folder. Okay, so let's go ahead and quickly create these files. Control N, Control S, Control V. And I'm gonna change this to language folder. Okay, I'm gonna save it here, so the file will appear here. Okay, so what are the escape characters in the console? So I'm going to remove this just to make sure, and I'm repeating it this, that if you are not using any other code apart from PHP, you don't need the closing tag. Okay, I may repeat it again and again sometimes just to make sure you get this concept clear, because that's basically the good coding standards from PHP. These are the multi-line comments, if you remember that. So I'm going to show you what are the escaping characters in console. First is /n. This is the backslash. Okay, you have to have a backslash and notation n. This is called as new line. Then you have carriage written. /t is a tab. If you want to have a tab, then you have to say /t. Then you have a special character called $. We haven't covered variables and constants, so when you go to the section on variable and constants, you will understand what is the value of the $. So even if you want to print the $, then you have to say backslash and $. Okay, then you have single quotes, and you have double quotes. Okay, and if you want to print the backslash, then you can print 2. Okay, this means escaping. This slash is called as escaping character. Okay, so let's use this and print some text. So let's say echo this isn't print, and let's say I want to use double quotes here. Okay, not possible. This is not possible because you cannot write double quotes inside the double quote. So what we can do, we can put a slash here. Okay, next let's say you want to print a new line, so I'll say new line. This is printed on new line. Then next let's use again a new line, just to see how 2 new lines look at the output. And then we'll add a tab. We have a tab to say /t here, and then say we'll slash in. Okay, so we have tabs there, 2 tabs. Then we'll say this is a special, so we'll say special character inside the, not generally a special character, but really having a special meaning of the escape characters. Okay, so that's all for this example. Let's run this code on the console. So I'm going to open command prompt. Go to language folder and say PHP escape characters in console. So I'm running this program, and if you're seeing the program, we'll see, compare the output now. Okay, so you see we have new lines here and a carriage written. Then we have a space here that's basically coming up from the tab, and then we have the double quotes being printed. Double quotes here, double quotes here. So what happens if I change this to single quote and I want this to be single quote? Right, let's execute this. Okay, even though, right, so it's escaping the single quote, and I'm gonna say let's remove this new line. We put the new line here. Okay, let's execute this. Okay, so there's one thing that you have to be careful with is if you're using single quotes, whatever is inside this single quote, the escape characters are not converted, means they are not rendered in the output. So it is going to treat anything that is inside the single quote as a simple text. Okay, so make sure when you want to print the escape characters, it is in double quotes, not in single quotes. Okay, so that's why you see the /n is printed instead of a new line, because we are using single quotes. If you want that new lines to be converted, you have to convert this into a double quote. Okay, so remember that's rule, and we're going to start doing the next example. So we're going to use the escape characters in HTML. So before that, so let's verify how this file looks like in the HTML. So I'm going to show you this output and the HTML output. Obviously the HTML doesn't understand all those /ns and /r, and if you see the page source, you still see the tab, you still see the new line, you still see the carriage written, but the output doesn't really care, because output of HTML, and as per HTML standard, it ignores all the white spaces, /n, /rs, and all the things that you put in the HTML page. So in the next sample, we're going to see how to deal with this. Okay, so let's start writing the second sample. So I'm going to create this file. Let's copy over this thing. Okay, and we're going to say new line in HTML is BR. Okay, carriage written, can say BR. This is called as &NBSP semicolon, and you can use double quotes, which anyway will be printed. Right, the main important thing is basically how do you put a tab and how do you enter a new line. Okay, so let's do that in the new line. It doesn't matter single quote or double quote as of now, because anyway those will be printed as part of our output in the HTML, and HTML will take care of those BRs. Here you say &NBSP semicolon, BSP. Right, you have a tab here. Okay, so this file will be available for you to verify. This is in the after folder, and you know how to print your single quotes, you know how to print a new line, carriage written, and then you know how to print a space. It's not a tab, but it's basically a space. So using space, you create the tabs there, and if you verify the output, you're gonna see those characters. You're not gonna see the output that you saw in the console, but you're gonna see the characters because HTML understand the HTML code. So you have to convert that into an HTML code so that it looks exactly like same of what you have seen in the console. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I hope you have understood how to work with the escape characters. Okay, alright, I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome to the lecture on PHP Reserve Words. So let's look into all the reserve words from PHP. Well, these are the PHP keywords that's used in the PHP language. So you're not allowed to use this because that will error out and it will create confusion for the program. And these words are used by the program. It is used as a language keywords, so you are not allowed to use it to define your variables, to define your constants, or you define your function names or class names. I have given you the link, so go to this link. You can find all these keywords. It keeps changing, adding something new and removing something in the old one. So make sure you have a look at all the keywords, and as I told you, these keywords you're not allowed to use in your programming language. These are predefined one, and you do not use it to write your variable name, constants, functions, or your class names. So here are some of the reserve words. I've given you the link. You can go to this link and always have a look what are the reserve words that has been newly added in the PHP version. int, float, and bool are basically all these are called as data types, which are also called as reserve words. Next, let's look at the predefined constants. So when we haven't covered constants will be covered in the next section. We're going to use some of the constants and we're going to write some program, but we are topic to the reserve words. Even some of the predefined constants are reserved. You're not allowed to use it for your variable or any of your programming purpose. It's already predefined in the language, so you have to use it as per whatever is this constant will do. Let's say you have a PHP version, you want to print the PHP version, you can use this PHP version constant and print it with an echo, right? You cannot use it for define a variable. I've given you the link again for reserved constants. Just go to this link and have a look in all the predefined constants that you have. Okay, so I believe there are 3 types. I'll go back to the slides again, going back one step, another step. So here you have the PHP keywords. I have given you the link. You have the reserve words. I have also given you the other reserve words. And next you have the predefined constants, which you should not be using or any of your programming purposes. So that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on recap on the language basics. So we'll do a quick recap on all the concepts that we have seen in this section. So let's go to the material folder and you open the recap language basics, open the flow and the derivables. So part of this will create one PHP file. So the logical flow, we will look at embed, how to embed the PHP tags. We'll run PHP on console. We'll use some white spaces, then we'll use some escape characters. So let's quickly do this in just one file, just to show all the concepts. So in this you have 2 folders, before and after. So whenever you see before and after, before is the folder you want to start with, means you should start opening this file and start typing and doing this exercise if you're doing it without seeing. And if you have done this exercise and you want to verify, then you can open this file and you can verify the output. So whatever I'm doing here will be available as part of this file. Okay, so let's create this file first. Okay, so let's do this for example in one. So for this, as I told you, we will be opening up the basics file, before file. So go to this and we will copy this code and we'll place it here. So this is basically your starting point. Okay, and it has some title tag and h1 tag and no PHP code here. Now I'm gonna use bihar to print the new lines onto the browser. Okay, so let's put this around a paragraph. I'm doing some indentation just to look it better. And I'm going to print an horizontal line. Then let's print some white space text. I'm just printing something just to show you how it will look like in the output. We have seen this, but it's just a recap. It's really fun to run with PHP, trust me. Okay, let's look at how to use escape characters. Did you read the PHP cookbook? If you haven't done it, please read it. It's a very nice book. Right, so I'm using a single code inside a single code. So I'll escape this with the backslash. It's basically escaping character. So just a quick recap, we have used PHP inside HTML. We have used the white spaces, a lot of white spaces here. And then there's an backslash to escape the single quotes. And then I'll gonna put a BR here. Okay, so let's verify this in the console and also on the web browser. So you see single quotes are fine. And we haven't embedded new lines here. So we can do a new line here. Doesn't harm. Because it's a double quote, even that should work fine. Yep, you have the new line after the BR. And yeah, let's execute this program onto the browser now. So we're using all the concepts that we have learned. Okay, so if you compare the outputs, basically the BRs is basically converting into a new lines. That's basically from this line, and there's an horizontal line, and then all your spaces are gone. Then you have your single quotes already available. Right, you still see the white spaces on the output. Okay, so that's basically the recap on the language basics. Next, let's look at some of the exercises that we have, and then we'll have some practical test for you to do some hands-on. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the exercise on displaying the following text on the web page. So what I want you to do is I want you to display exactly the same output with the PHP. I'll leave you with your own creation, whatever tags you want to use, and try not to use everything with HTML. Try to print this output with PHP because that's the purpose. Okay, the only thing that you need to know is the about me is the heading tags. Skill is an heading tag. The second, I am Srini and I love to work with PHP is basically an H2 tag. Then able to develop is a paragraph. And make sure you use PHP with all the concepts that you have learned. Don't try to skip those concepts and put everything into one echo tag and print the output. Don't do that. Split this into multiple ways that you have learned. Use some BRs there, use a different way to print a tag. Use all the concepts that you have learned so that you get used to the PHP. So that's the exercise I want to do, and make sure you print the similar output on your web page with PHP. Okay, so let's do the exercise now. Welcome to the lecture, and I believe you have done the exercise and you were able to print the output that I've shown you to print. Well, if you haven't done that and you have some questions, you can go back to exercise 1 folder. You can go to before and after, and you can find the files there. Before file is basically the file that you start with, and after is that where you end. Okay, and there's an image here. When you open this, you will be able to see what the output you want to print. Let's open the other files and let's start doing this exercise now. Okay, so I'm going to take this file, go to Sublime, create this file. So we're going to use all the new concepts and build a HTML page like the one that I've shown you. Let's start writing the code. So for this, as I told you, you have to use the before file. We'll copy this, we will start it from here. Okay, so let's start printing the text. So I'm going to use H2 as I told you. Inside H2, I'm going to escape the single quote because I'm using single quote. This way I'm going to learn how to escape single quotes. Right, I can use semicolon or I can skip it, doesn't really matter. Then I have an horizontal line. Then I have h1 which says skills. Then I will use a paragraph tag. Here I can type that text. Right, and you can play around with the white spaces, and you can do some more modification here based on whatever learnings you have, but pretty much this one will give you the same output as requested. So let's quickly verify this file. Right, so this is the code and this is the output. Okay, so I believe you were able to do this exercise, and I believe you are able to get the same output as mine, and you were able to do this exercise. And if you have any questions and you need any clarification, then you can go back to the Q&A section and you can post your questions, and I'll be happy to help you there. Okay, so that's all for this section. I'll see you in the next topic. Welcome to the assignment, and in this assignment you're going to create a web page with PHP using all the language basics that you have learned in this section. So this section doesn't have an output for you to print out. I'm going to leave you with all the concepts that you have learned, and make sure you follow some concepts that you have learned and implement in your web page. So what I want you to do is, if you go to deliverable folder, you can go ahead and create this file, my first webpage.php. I'm not going to give you instruction on what you're going to put inside the web page, but write a simple profile and try to create your own resume describing all the headings and the paragraphs, and use h1 tag and p tag, and try to use the PHP to print that output. Okay, once you do that exercise, do share those output into the assignment section so that I can help you validate that, see, and then I can post my comments. And that's going to be a simple competition among all the students that also been taking the same course. So we'll see who's going to come up with a brilliant HTML page with all the concepts that we have learned. Don't do anything new or fancy what we haven't learned. Try to look into the concepts that we have learned and also implement that and come up with a brilliant HTML page. And I'm going to post it to the assignment, and I'm going to view it, and then I'm going to provide my feedback in that. Okay, so that's all for this section, and I'm going to see you in the next one. So we have reached to the end of this section on PHP language basics. So by now you should be able to embed PHP in HTML pages. I highly recommend and now start writing your PHP code with HTML. Don't just write PHP. So now you should be able to use HTML with PHP. You should be able to run your PHP code on console. You should know how the white space behave in PHP in the output. You should also know how to work with the escaping characters in PHP. So by now you should also be able to know the roles of the PHP Reserve Words. And I believe you have worked with the exercises, interview question, resources, and practical test. This will give you overall idea on how to work with PHP, and you have a basic knowledge on how to write a PHP code and how to execute the PHP code with the HTML. Well, that's the end of this section, and I'll see you in the next one.